So, welcome to this special recording of the MQ Open Mind podcast. We're recording this at Deutsche Bank, and we're absolutely delighted to be here today. We've got a fantastic set of special guests. We've got AJ and Curtis Pritchard. We've got Linda Lusardi and friend of the show, Gemma Styles. So, as you all know, MQ mental health research is focused on learning more about how different conditions manifest, how we can better develop treatments to support those who are struggling with mental health problems, and also crucially trying to prevent mental health or mental illness developing in the first place. So I've really got a question for each one of you to start us to the ball rolling, and then we'll hopefully open it up a bit of your story here, a bit of each of your stories, and then we'll get some questions from the audience. So the format is in two halves. So let's maybe just kick off then. AJ, do you want to tell us a bit about, obviously we've got yourself and Curtis, your brother here. So thinking about mental health research, right? So that's what we do at MQ. Can you tell us something about what you would hope us to sort of focus on? What would the big question you would like us to address in mental health research?
I think the thing is, for me personally, I feel like I should say this before I myself and Curtis, we're brothers. We've been brought up exactly the same in every aspect of life, but we are two completely different people. We are two individuals. I'm very OCD. I like everything done 1, 2, 3, very, very ordered, and Curtis is very creative and a bit chaotic sometimes.
Cheers, AJ.
But the point of what I'm trying to explain is that I always feel that when you deal with a trauma or you feel like you're dealing with a situation, you feel down, it's very different for different people. It may be because a trauma's happened or an accident's happened, or it may just feel like you need help and you asking for help. We always kind of get hit with the exact same thing. It's like one thing hits all. One sentence helps everybody. Whereas in reality, everybody's an individual person.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's about understanding and putting the time into actually what works for me doesn't work for Curtis and vice versa. And it's going to be the same for everybody out there. So why do we put so much emphasis on like, this is the way it has to be to get better? If anything, if we're always kind of going on a linear format, like we're all going to be hit with the same thing. Whereas in reality, we're all going to have ups and downs. And it's finding out each kind of case study. Curtis likes to meditate. I don't like to meditate. I like to go to the gym. I like to have a strict routine. The routine allows me to have clarity in my life. So therefore I have that clarity in my brain and I can talk, I can make sense.
To sort of create like an algorithm where they can answer certain questions or something, and then that can maybe give them something different than them.
Understanding what makes people tick, making sure that they know who they are, they know what that makes them happy, they know that safe space, but also importantly, knowing what doesn't work for them. Because I feel we stay away from that. We shy away from, this doesn't work for me. Yeah. I don't like this. It sounds so negative, but if anything, if you know what you don't like, if you know what's not your personality, then you can kind of put that aside and focus on the positives.
Well, I think they're really important points. And what you highlight really well there is that struggle we often have in mental health research and treatment is between personalized approaches and then this sort of one-size-fits-all approach. And you're right, often we look at mental health treatment, often it is, here's cognitive behavioral therapy or mindfulness-based therapy or whatever it may be. And the key point is exactly that, is that no treatment will work for everyone.
Yeah.
And actually really timely you mentioned, well, I think Curtis is going to say more about his meditation or mindfulness, because there's a new study come out a few weeks ago from the UK, which shows that mindfulness, for example, doesn't work with school kids.
Yeah.
And so there's this plan to try and do mindfulness in schools, but it's that idea that some people like the quietness in their heads and others don't. Because I also struggle with, I've tried meditation, but
it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone.
It's not,
it
really
not for everyone. So Curtis, over to you then. We've obviously AJ is trying to steal your thunder there. And, so tell us a bit about then. So you're a big fan of meditation then?
Yeah, so something I love to do, and if I ever feel myself in any situation starting to overthink things, starting to let too many thoughts into my head and that I can't make a decision, or it's making me procrastinate really and then not be able to progress in my work life or any part of life, I just try and sit down, meditate for 5-10 minutes, however long it takes, just to settle my brain down, calm me down. And it's one of the best things I've ever learned, to be able to focus myself and just get back into that action of, right, we can move forward, continue now and not overthink things. I struggle to sleep as well. And I've never wanted to take any tablets. This is one of my big key things. And this is what I think research into mental health, like you were saying, mindfulness doesn't so much work in schools and stuff. I think at that age, they need to have fun, outside freedom, play around and learn through that. But I do think as you get into your teenage years, a bit of mindfulness could be perhaps beneficial for people in their teenage years, because that's when they are getting older and growing up. And I think that's when they should learn to be able to control their brain, control their thoughts a little bit more. So trying to stay away from medication if possible. And can we use our brain, our body, and ourselves more efficiently to actually cure mental health in certain situations? That's what I would really like to look into more. Because I feel like our body and our brain is more powerful than we realize. If we really actually take the time to look at ourselves and work on ourselves, we are more powerful than we realize.
Just be kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, most people aren't kind to themselves.
Listen
like,
to what your body
feel
wants.
good today or feel bad today, like actually like take note of that.
And
not
listen
just
to what your body wants. If you're
avoid
tired,
it.
sleep.
Yeah,
if you're hungry,
sleep is
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
But because obviously anything which interrupts with our sleep is bad for physical health, and it's also bad for mental health. I suppose I would challenge you a bit, or push back a bit, though, Curtis, you saying about, and for me, it's, teenage years are so difficult, of course, and we know that mental health problems are rare before puberty. Puberty kicks in, and that's when you start to see this marked increase in mental health problems. So, of course, it's a time to intervene and support people. But I suppose there's lots of evidence out there that, psychological treatments and talking therapies work for some. Others, medication is important to help get the body in some sort of state, or that it's open to talking therapies or to support and so on. So I think for me, it's all about these personalized approaches.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting. So I suppose he has similar ideas in terms of the research.
Because a great one that I was actually used was Wim Hof as well. Which was one of the best meditations I'd ever done, because I originally started and I was just focused on my breathing, and then I thought I want to try something different, expand my brain and everything. And Wim Hof is a great one as well. Just throwing it out there if anyone wants to try it.
I tried it. I've tried it. Been in the ice pool and all that.
Yeah, and it really does free your mind.
And honestly, that breathing really works.
Because it over oxygenates your body, so therefore it really just makes you feel.
But I don't understand why you don't get goosebumps and you're not cold.
But hold on. For those who don't know about the Wim Hof breathing, what is it?
So basically, Wim Hof breathing is a method to over-oxygenate your body, and it climatizes yourself to the climate outside. So whether you're in freezing water, it will warm your body temperature up to its natural state. Whether you're in the Sahara Desert, it'll cool it down to its natural state. And it likes to keep your body plateau, so therefore your body doesn't feel these stressed situations, and it can control you in stressful situations then. And you can be in control of your body, not it in control of you.
That was what on SAS, like what we're doing right now with the High Pressure, the TV show, like the breathing, that was the one thing that allowed me to get through each step, because you're hit with a problem and it's take the breath, step back, make it simple in front of you and solve the problem. Without that breathing, you just go to pot.
And supposedly, if done properly and for a long enough period, your body can create a natural DMT through its brain and through its cells, and that is what can be released.
DMT.
I believe it's that thing.
Is it? Was it that deep?
I don't know the exact meaning of it. So and I'm not a medical person, so I'm not going to go down.
I think that's a chemical rather than an acronym.
It is a chemical. Yeah.
Okay. DMT. We'll work it out afterwards.
You Google it now, Curtis, quick.
Yeah, because there is a drug which people take, but your body naturally produces.
Okay, right. Okay, so, Well, just on the Wim Hof stuff and the cold water, the wild swimming, because again, this week there's some evidence coming out that the cold water swimming or wild swimming has beneficial effects both for physical and mental health. So
physically, definitely.
And I've done it, and I did 3 months of it constantly. Cold showers. I took out any hot water from my life, and it focused me like I'd never been focused before. I did do it to extremes, so then I plateaued and went to normal life and doing it. But I did it every morning without fail, and every evening, constantly for 3 months.
For 3 months.
It was. Wow. It truly was life changing.
Linda, Gemma, have any of you done the cold water thing?
I've been cold water swimming.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've definitely not done it for 3 months in a row and felt my life change because of it, but it's good. I mean, you feel great afterwards, I'll give you that.
But I have woken up sort of feeling quite depressed, and then when I've done the cold water swimming, you just feel energized and you feel like a new day starts, and you feel all the blood rushing to the surface when you get out, and it does make you feel better.
It's great for your skin as well.
Yeah.
Apparently it makes you look younger. I mean, everyone thought I was older than AJ, so it didn't work too well.
It's too cold for you.
Yeah, those 15 months.
They've hit him hard.
So then moving on then, Linda, to yourself. So same question for you. Thinking about mental health research, and what sort of key questions you think if I could make MQ Research fund a particular piece of work, what would it be?
Well, I think it's the work that you work on with the suicide, really. I mean, went to the Caroline Flack concert, and more celebrities are feeling so much under pressure that they're committing suicide. And I think, you know, it really needs to be looked into. And people have just got to talk to each other more, I feel. And I mean, the way that the health system is at the moment, you said to me you should go and talk to a doctor. That's not that easy anymore.
No.
You know, you can't, and they haven't got time to listen to you. They're so busy. So, you know, if you've got a support of family and friends around you, then I think to speak is really a way to help your mental health. Talk about your problems, get them out there, discuss them with people, and that, you know, your friends can help you. But I really feel that you know, so many young people are committing suicide more and more every year, that the research you're doing is just so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important topic, and obviously something I feel very passionately about. I've been working in this area for 28 years on suicide, and it is, I mean, the good, I suppose, and the positive news has been there has been a sort of step change in focus in mental health and hopefully suicide prevention. But the reality is 703,000 people die by suicide each year across the globe. And you mentioned young people, and the sad reality is it's before the pandemic, young people's mental health was deteriorating, and now thankfully during COVID, suicide rates didn't go up. But my fear now, as we're recording this in really uncertain times with economic crisis, inflationary crisis, energy crisis, lots of crises, and that's a big fear for me, is we need to protect our young people, especially as they've gone through COVID, and a lot of the school-age kids and university kids or college kids or whoever it may be, went through a really difficult time.
Well, having had COVID badly myself, I know that it has affected my brain health. You know, I don't sleep as well. I get anxious. You know, it's affected my family. My daughter's had to have sort of therapy because of nearly losing me. She's like had panic attacks and things. So there's a lot of mental health around me at the moment, and I feel, you know, that COVID has really added to it majorly.
Oh, it has. And one of the studies we did, actually, we've been monitoring the mental health of the UK population and a sample. And exactly, although thankfully the suicide rates haven't increased or didn't increase, that people's mental health, I mean, especially young people who had pre-existing mental health problems, people who've experienced COVID, and really women, 3 or 4 groups of people who have been really adversely affected. So we have to be social vigilant. So thanks for highlighting that, Linda. And the other bit I suppose to say is, every one of us has our own experience or story being affected by suicide, and some of the data out there are just horrendous. So we now reckon that for every person who dies by suicide, there's upwards maybe of 135 people may have known that person, so potentially affected. So it's so important that we talk about suicide and mental health more broadly. So so thank you for that, Linda. And so you're obviously talked about your experience of COVID and the mental health consequences of that. So how are you doing now?
I'm all right. I'm getting there. I mean, I think it was, you know, the fact that I nearly lost my life and then coming home, it was hard for me to get back into normal life again. But I'm getting there, and no, I'm healthily, much more healthy now. I've still got scar tissue on my lungs, and I don't breathe as much as well as I used to, and I'm not as fit as I was. But you know, at least I'm still here.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a bit of a terrifying time.
It was, not just for me, because actually it was probably less terrifying for me because I was the one in the hospital bed feeling, you know, out of it most of the time. But for my family, and, you know, to see my husband was in as well, see both of us carted off in an ambulance, not knowing if we'd come back. It was.
I didn't realise both of you
Yeah.
were hospitalised.
Yeah, he was in. He wasn't quite. He'd got over the worst when he was taken in, but I dipped quite fast, and I didn't really fit any of the criteria, you know. But it was such early days when there was no PPE, and people were saying the symptoms, and I didn't have most of those symptoms. I had different symptoms, and so it was frightening, very frightening. But you know, we're fine now.
Yeah, but I think it's
a smile on your face and you look great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's a stark reminder of yes, we might be through the pandemic. Hopefully we're through the pandemic, but we'll be living in some shape or form with the consequences of it in the years to come. But it's just anything which introduces further inequality, I think that's what COVID more generally has done, is all the inequalities which were there before the pandemic have just got worse. And that's a bit now we need to be so vigilant about. So thanks for that, Linda. We'll move on now to the friend of the show, Gemma, has been on the podcast before and is a delight as always to have you here, Gemma. So same question to you, thinking about priorities, because we probably asked you this question the last time. So in the
Maybe
podcast,
I can't remember what I said. I wonder if it's going to be different.
but time's moved on. It was a while ago. So same question in terms of what you think we should be prioritizing, what should we be funding in mental health research?
I mean, personally, I would love to see more kind of joining the dots between different conditions. And I think that probably comes from more of my personal experience. So in terms of mental health history, I've got a very long history of depression and anxiety and those kind of like, which are commonly related conditions. But something that's come up more recently, I was diagnosed with ADHD earlier this year, which has been really eye-opening just in terms of how it links very commonly to like comorbid conditions of depression and anxiety. And it's kind of, there's a bit of, a cause and effect thing that I would love to see more research about. But I think even in terms of kind of what AJ was saying before about how everyone is very different, we're all individual people. But even in saying that, as you were saying, the inequalities that exist, there are vast differences between you as people, and you are both white men, if you don't mind me saying. So the further away you get from being a white man, I mean, as a woman, all of the different kinds of inequalities that we face, the less that the data that we have serves you so far. So it took me until I was in my 30s to be diagnosed with ADHD, because the criteria that we have focus on young boys generally. So it's harder to tick a box and immediately see what fits in and what doesn't. And then that makes it even harder to see what conditions could link to each other. So I would really like to see, a more kind of looking further into broadening the data that we have, and then also seeing how it fits together.
Yeah, I think that's really important, broader messages there, Gemma, because obviously in the research field, we talk about this idea of looking at trans-diagnostic approaches and recognizing that although these diagnoses like ADHD or depression or anxiety, we sort of think of them as these categories or these boxes, because that's the way they've been developed. But in reality, they're not boxes. That there's obviously this manual that was developed many years ago, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for diagnosis of these sorts of mental health problems, that so forces things into these boxes or these categories. But in reality, what you've just described there is often there's overlap, there's symptoms which cross all of these different mental health problems. So the relationship between ADHD and depression and anxiety, I mean, it's not surprising that they're going to be related. And I think, but you raise a really important point about a woman being diagnosed later in life. There's a couple of things. One is that how ADHD or symptoms of ADHD manifest in girls versus boys is very, very different. And often, as you will know, that there's underdiagnosis, or some people argue there's an underdiagnosis of ADHD in girls. But then the other bit is to get a diagnosis for ADHD as an adult can take some time. I think you had experienced that as well. It took some time to actually get the diagnosis, to get the treatment, to get the support, and that's really challenging.
And is that just because of lack of staff?
That's part of it. Part of it is lack of staff out there, and there's long waiting lists. There's just long waiting lists for, because I mean, it's an interesting question. Is it that people don't see it as important as some other diagnoses? I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, yeah.
But there's ADHD. I've had personal experiences of ADHD in the family, and we experience similar sorts of issues. So it's a really important.
And where would you get that diagnosed? From a doctor or from a therapist, or
it has to be from a psychiatrist. But I think that's kind of maybe partly where the issue is, and where I would like to kind of on a health in general basis see things linked more. And I'm not sure how you would do that, because I mean, ADHD isn't a mental health condition. That's the thing. So we're obviously talking about mental health today. That isn't a mental health condition, but it's so linked when you look at any information that we've got. But even things that seem completely random that I've then, when I've looked up, I mean, I like to read information about things when I find out I've got something. So I've read then a lot about ADHD, and it's really things that would seem so inconsequential, like having very dry eyes and having a B12 deficiency, are things I was kind of then looking through this research and ticking loads of boxes for things that I never would have thought had anything to do with any kind of like neurodiverse condition or mental health condition or anything. But as soon as you've kind of got the terminology and you know what you're looking for, there is research there that connects so many different things. So I think, I mean, yeah, I'm not the person who could tell you where we would even start to try and do that. But yeah, trying to gather from different areas of health and mental health and all of the different research that there is to try and make it work for people.
Yeah, but I think, so I would say on reflecting over the last 20 odd years working in mental health, there has been progress in terms of trying to break down this artificial physical health and mental health barrier. And we're actually at MQ leading this project called Gone Too Soon, which is trying to look at early mortality from that interface of comorbidities, as you described them, Gemma, and obviously things like suicide, because we recognize this is just arbitrary. We're one being, we're one person, our mind and body are intimately linked. And of course, with ADHD, the other issue is, although there are common factors, how it presents itself is very different in different people. And obviously, there's the inattention component, you're talking about the dry eyes, whatever, there's all these other physical symptoms, as well as then the impulsivity and hyperactive side of things. So it's really complex, but I think we are making progress. So, but I think, and something MQ has been trying to push forward is this recognition of taking this trans-diagnostic approach here across all mental health problems and physical health problems, trying to understand those. But then it's just then going, how do we get people the help that they need? Because I think we'll all have experienced it. Any of us have tried to get mental health or physical health support, there are still a waiting list, and that's.
I think, like, for me, it's an interesting question to ask you is like, do you feel better for knowing that now?
Yeah.
For helping other things. And I think that's the kind of the forgetful thing. Like we put all this time and effort into it, but actually now you knowing that you can help yourself and solve so many problems, so much time and effort and wasted energy in the rest of your life moving forward. And I feel like people forget that. Like the reason why you put the time in now is then you help somebody that they can go off and do their thing now.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, we'll leave it. Whereas actually, no, the sooner we solve it, the sooner we're helping everybody in how many people are affected in your life that now know that this is about you, you're helping other people.
Yeah, because I've got ADHD as well. I feel like that's always led me to build my anxiety, because it sounds like a really stupid example, but like I'm really bad with messaging. So like somebody will send me a message and just the lack of focus, I won't get to it. And then the anxiety builds that person may, like, oh, why is he not messaging? Oh, he's a bad person, he's a bad guy. That starts leading to the depression type of thing. But understanding that now it's ADHD explains so much. I can go through like my history and go, oh, okay, that's why I did that. That's why this and that.
Yeah.
So it's
the clarity.
The clarity, I think, unlocks something
inside
inside
you. Your friends know now, so they accept that you don't message straight back.
Yeah.
So, or maybe they don't.
Yeah. It's more that. Yeah.
Do you find it now that, like, you know that, do you find it easier to message back, and do you find it easier to actually do the things, like, because you're aware of it now, or?
It's more than just the messaging. I know exactly.
Yeah.
But
I was very intrigued only because I actually am the same. When it comes to messaging, I tend not to message people back, and then I actually have the same thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, am I a bad person? I should have messaged back. Why haven't I messaged back? On all different things. Are they going to think this, and yada yada yada?
I'm thinking about all the people I have to message right now.
And AJ said, I always message people back.
I message everybody back within a second. I get paranoid if I don't. And I have to do it for Curtis as well.
We've heard how type A you are today, so that makes sense too.
I think with that is it just I feel I'm less pressure on myself.
Yeah.
I feel like
kind to yourself, as a person.
Because if someone had a physical issue like mobility, you wouldn't expect them to run a marathon or something like that. So you know that type of thing where I feel a little bit easier on myself. It's like this is part and parcel of what it is.
But that's the same message that others have said. I think one of Curtis or AJ said it. That's the central importance of self-compassion. Yeah. I think we're just still not good enough at doing that. But I think in the context of having an ADHD label, it gives you a knowledge and understanding going, actually, it's okay. It's understandable that I don't message back or whatever the thing is. And that hopefully will help with the self-compassion, but also in communicating to those around you. Sorry, Linda, you were trying to
I
come
was
in
going to
there.
say there must be so many people out there that aren't diagnosed that don't realise that they've got anything, going wrong with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's nice that podcasts like this making people aware a little bit more that they can go and get diagnosed or helped because they're just having a frustrating life, trying to navigate with this, debilitating mental issue.
I think it's the same with lots of conditions as well, because I mean, it's quite not easy, but I say it's easier to talk about depression and anxiety that I have history of, for example, because those are more, let's say, mainstream kind of talked about now. But there are a lot of other conditions, like we mentioned, kind of like psychosis earlier, or OCD or BPD, or like there's lots of other conditions that we don't really talk about very much. They're less understood. So for people who are living with these conditions, in a similar way to maybe you and I would have had experience not knowing that we had ADHD, it's the why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? I don't understand. Why do I find this really difficult? So I think having a diagnosis of something, as you said, can be helpful just purely in itself, because it takes away a level of that sort of self-blame that you put on.
Absolutely, yeah.
When we think about, we're sitting here now all talking about mental health, but most of our conversations, as you just said, are around things that we find much more comfortable to talk about, like depression and anxiety. Even suicide, we've got more comfortable talking about that. But psychosis, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, I think we talk about those less. So still that journey of destigmatization, journey of tackling the myths around mental health, and in my case, what we do in suicide, try and tackle all those myths out there. But that's why these conversations are so important. So thanks everybody for that's this part of our sort of initial questions. We're now moving on to Craig.
Okay, so first question was to Gemma. What do you think is the impact of social media on mental health?
Massively wide ranging. I feel like I end up talking about this a lot. I think there is a lot said about the negative impacts of social media on mental health, which I think can be very true. And there are a lot of ways that people end up comparing themselves to other people. And I think that can really have an impact on self-esteem, and that leads into a lot of things. I do think, however, that the amount of community and kind of outreach that you can do with social media does mean I would probably count it as a net kind of positive in, even as we were just saying, the amount that people are willing to talk about depression and anxiety and suicide, even as you said. We weren't having those conversations even not that long ago. And I think social media has been probably the main way that those conversations have progressed. And I mean, even thinking about, so I did an episode of my podcast with Rory a few months ago, and we talked about suicide prevention, for example. And that, I had a message from someone that they would have had no idea what to do, but one of their close friends or family members confided in them that they were having suicidal thoughts. And they sent a message to us kind of saying, I would have had no idea what to do if I hadn't heard you talking about this. And that's just an example of one person, but there are so many people out there now talking about mental health on social media, and it all sort of tree branches off, and they're all reaching different people. And even if you don't kind of get a message that says, oh, this is actually how that helped me in that way, it is helping people, even if you can't see it. And the way that we talk about depression now, and that's filtered through, and it's a lot easier, I would say, as someone who talks about it a lot, it's a lot easier to talk about now than it would have been a few years ago. If we keep pushing that forwards and broadening it out to other conditions, talking about those more on social media, making sure that other people get the same amount of airtime that they need, that we've kind of had for a while with anxiety, for example, then hopefully we can keep pushing that forwards. And that's how you get not only awareness of conditions, but a bit more understanding of how, because that's something that I do hear as well. It's we've got a lot of awareness of mental health, mental illnesses now, but when actual consequences crop up for people in their day-to-day lives, and it's disruptive and it's not pleasant, and you've got doctor's appointments to go to, and it actually really does impact the work and the socializing and your family life, it's the impacts rather than just being aware of it that I think we still have got some way to improving how we respond to those.
Yeah.
I think one second just on Gemma, you did a brilliant thing though for World Suicide Prevention Day, because part of it touches on the last thing you said about, there's one thing, raising awareness, right? But what you did was Gemma did this great thing on Instagram about getting people to submit stories of hope or messages of hope.
Yeah,
That's a lovely thing then to do, because that's part of what we think about helping people. It's helping people through those dark days, and those messages of hope that people sent to Gemma were just brilliant. I mean, and they weren't some of them really, really simple things.
And that's through having researched like what MQ does and what you do through all of your work in suicide. And that's the research that has shown that hearing those messages from people who've been in the same situation and have recovered, there's data and kind of the evidence that shows that that really does help people and does prevent cases of suicide. So having that kind of data, and then it gives us actions to do rather than moving on from the talking, having actions to take because we've got the information. It all kind of snowballs into one, and then you can link in the social media, use all that information, and I'll end my very long sentence.
Curtis,
Yes.
do you have any coping mechanisms or strategies for when you're in a stressful situation? I know we spoke about meditation.
Yeah, it's that is one of the biggest things. And I do something called power stances as well, actually, to be fair. So if I'm ever going to go into a big speech, if I've got a big group of people in front of me, or if I'm going into anywhere where I need to feel confident and powerful, I do a couple of different things with power stances. And they're simple things. I'll stand up and I'll do one for you. So literally it is stand with your legs apart.
2 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've been teaching this to uni students. So this is one power stance, exactly like this. Just stand like that for a little bit. Shoulders back, chin up, and this makes you feel confident and powerful. And this is one of the biggest problems with today, at the age and everything that we do. We're all on phones all the time, and we're like this. This is a negative power stance. So naturally, our body is in a stress position, a depressed position. So this is why I always like to do these power stances before doing anything. It's a great way to just open yourself up, drop everything back. And this is another one, just this position. Stay like that for a minute, and you'll just feel a little bit more open and ready to accomplish and do whatever you want. So that's one of my mechanisms. And the other is meditation. Clears my brain, brings all of my thoughts together and my emotions together. So therefore I can just pick out my thoughts, pick out my emotions, however I need them to be. So it makes me control myself in a way.
And when you say meditation, how does one meditate?
So I've done a couple of different things, to be fair. How I first started meditating was I never did any guided stuff or anything. I literally lay on my bed and I just focused on my breathing. And I closed my eyes and I looked at, so you know when you close your eyes, there's just a darkness in front of your eyes. I tried to focus on that darkness. So not saying dark as in like horrible and grungy things. It was just black behind your eyes. So I just focused my mind on that. Breathed in through my nose as long as I could, just kept breathing in. And I would just breathe out as long as I possibly could, just focusing on that. Whenever my mind wandered, I would just bring it back to right behind my eyes, to that darkness. And it just focused my mind and it stopped it from overthinking or being worried about anything. It just brings you back down, and then you can accomplish it and go for whatever you want to. That's my best mechanisms. But power stances, great things.
I'm always like, go off.
It takes 5 minutes. And don't
Like,
worry if
stop
your mind
talking.
does. Don't worry if it wanders off and stuff. You can hone it back in, bring it back in. It'll take 5 to 10 minutes before you
It took you a
actually.
while to actually get into it.
Yeah, it took me a long time. And build it up. Start by doing 5 minutes, then do 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Don't just go for a 20-minute meditation, because you'll never do it again.
Yeah, and so the key thing about it is it takes practice.
Yeah.
And don't get annoyed with yourself if your mind wanders.
Yeah.
That's perfectly
Because I'm
Bring it
human.
back.
Oh no, I should have been going down.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
post.
just
Sorry, I should
just
be
go.
going
That's fine, and bring it back.
And then you have to do 21 days or something before it becomes like a
28
routine.
days.
Is
28
that
days.
the
Yeah.
general thing?
And
Then
then
whatever
if
you
you
try.
can't do it up to that, then
To break a habit or change a habit, 28 days is the rough estimate time to.
So there's
to
hope
change
with my
something.
chocolate eating at night. Then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, right.
I wouldn't
And
change out the
never make
world.
Big changes if you're going to do something. Little increments is the best way to achieve anything.
Okay.
So yeah, meditation, power stances, great things.
With the power stances, actually, I do that before every job interview.
Yeah,
Yeah, I go to the bathroom, stand there like Superman.
yeah,
Do a couple of
yeah.
deep breaths, and walk in.
And
It
there's one,
works
and you
so
can put your
much,
hands
like-
in the air. Like anything that opens you up big, proud, and strong, your body naturally feels that, and it will release positive endorphins and all of this and that. Anything small, you're in a negative position, a stress position. And I think this is what happens to a lot of young people these days, because we are
trapped.
on our phones so much.
Mm.
Without even realizing it, we're putting ourselves in a negative position. So we need to stop that. Power stances in schools, that's what people need to do. For job interviews, anything.
Yeah.
Hold on, Gemma was about to jump in there, right, Gemma? Or you do a
Oh,
power
I
stance?
think no, that was just I can't hear anything about power stances without thinking about Grey's Anatomy. If anyone watches Grey's Anatomy, there's a character in that, and she does her before surgery power stance. So she was like, I was like, ah.
But yeah, like the top billionaires, top big business people, anything before they go into big speeches. There's a lot of TED Talks on it. Have a little YouTube on them, and they really do help them.
Have you got any other power stances? Was
Yeah,
that the
so
main
I'll
one?
give you a couple. So literally, hands on the hips is one.
Yeah.
Hands behind the head, and this one's great for your posture. What I like to do on this one is push my head
Standing
back
up,
into my
yeah.
arms. You don't have to stand up, but I like to stand up, or simply hands behind your back, anything like this, and hands in the air. These are all power stances. You may look silly, but I guarantee it will help and it'll make you feel better. So yeah, give it a go.
But then, obviously, for those of you who are listening to this,
Oh yes,
viewing
I
it,
forgot
viewing
it's
it,
not video.
Curtis probably has some YouTube video of him doing it.
I will. You know what? On my Instagram, I'm going to put some power
There
stances.
we go.
on.
You've said it
I'll
now, you have to do it.
I'll put them on
and
there,
I'll put
yeah.
it on mine as well.
Yeah.
Think a superhero, Batman or Superman
Yeah.
or something standing up.
Hands on the hips,
Yeah.
wide base. That's what it is. Hands on the hips, wide base, shoulders back, and chin up.
Opening that chest.
Yeah.
Linda, have you noticed any change in attitudes in the entertainment industry regarding mental health?
Yeah, I think it's much more accepted now. I think years ago, if there was any kind of inkling that someone had a bit of mental health problems, they wouldn't be used on a job. Whereas now, probably, I don't know if they do it on Strictly or on SAS, they've probably got some sort of mental health officer to talk.
You would have to do
things.
every TV show now. You
Yeah.
have to do a psych, and
And
if you don't have
with Love
past the psych
Island.
value,
Yeah.
you're not doing the show.
So I think that people are putting in place things to help people. I think, as I say, it's much more accepted. When you talk about it, you're not jeopardizing yourself getting the job. So I think we are going in the right direction in the entertainment industry.
I think the aftercare is something also. It's not just that pre. I'm going to do the TV show. You do the TV show, we'll forget about you. It's the aftercare that's improved, I think, the most. And unfortunately, due to suicide on shows like Love Island, that aftercare has been extended and it continues for fundamentally. If you
Rest of
need to
your
talk
life,
to
if
somebody
you
for
want
the rest of
to.
your
Yeah.
life,
We are very
It's
fortunate
covered.
in that way.
But I do think
Yeah.
that the programs that they're putting together are particularly healthy for mental health.
I think
In
it's the scenario of the way that it can be exacerbated by social media. It can, something so small can become something so big.
Yeah.
I go on the positive side as well. There's so many positives about social media, and I wouldn't want to just talk about the negatives, but sometimes the negatives outweigh the positives, especially when it's a personal thing.
When they're putting celebrities in scenarios that are really uncomfortable mentally.
Yeah, I'd say any TV and things like that is a very high stress situation because it is different than the real world. Even, for example, reality TV, they say it's reality. It's not, it's TV. So anybody that is listening that is fancying going that way, just remember it isn't real life and it's different. So go in open-minded, and therefore
Your friends and family know who you truly are.
Yeah.
But just a curious thing, AJ, you said that you do the psychological assessment beforehand,
Yeah.
and if you don't pass it, you don't get in. I don't know if I like the sound of that, because it should be in my mind that actually you do a psych assessment to recognise that we all have vulnerabilities, right, and we'll support you. So is it literally you wouldn't get on? If you
I
don't
think
pass?
it's a very grey area. If they feel that for that TV program, perhaps a person isn't best suited for it,
Okay.
then they would say no.
Okay,
I don't
yeah.
think there is a you pass or you
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah, because that was in.
Yeah, no, I think it's just they don't
Yeah.
think that you
You-
mentally
perhaps
cope
you
with
are
what
Yeah.
you're going to have
suited
to
It's the
for
say.
safety scenario, isn't it? You wouldn't want to be putting someone in a position that would be a detriment to their life or whatever the show is. I don't know. Strictly would be a different psychopath to doing a show like SAS Who Dares Wins,
Yeah.
and you're putting yourself under different pressures. And I think most of the time, most people that go for these shows understand what the show is that is in front of them now.
Mhm.
It's not hidden. It's talked about, and I think that's the positive side. So
Yeah.
people know that they can ask for help in advance, and I think that's something that's the most positive thing. It's not something that like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it.
Mhm.
It's like, well, you have to talk about it.
Yeah, because obviously if the message is if I say
Yeah.
X, I won't get on. Well, people just will go, I won't say X. I'll
Yeah,
just say
yeah,
something
yeah.
what I think I'll fake the test. And
Or
that's it.
something. Well, I'm not taking one. Well,
Yeah.
you're not doing the show, then are you?
But it's great to see the longer
Yeah.
term self-care, and that's really, really important.
What does the aftercare look like?
The aftercare is what you personally need as a person. Some people will need to talk to somebody maybe after a show to fill that decompression zone. So we've just done SAS and we filmed this last year, but simple things that were put into place that you may not think of. We did the show, and straight away we came off the show, we had to have 36 hours of decompression. And that was, your phone's back in your hand again. You're back in a normal hotel room. You have to allow your body to relax before we'd even get on a flight to come home. Things that you wouldn't even think of. And then obviously, do you need to talk to somebody? Like, do you not need to? And just the phone calls, like, it's like, oh, I'm never gonna hear from them again. Well, actually, you'd get a phone call 1 or 2 weeks later being like, hi, how are you? I literally had the producer call me the other day, and this is a year ago. Yeah. And she was like, so on the episode, we're going to have this, just so you know, are you happy with this? Preparing you for what's coming out. And knowing that you've got that support there to turn to if you do feel like you need it. It's so positive. It's so warm.
Yeah, I did Love Island 4 years ago. It must have been now. I could still, if I wanted it, have aftercare up till now. Yeah, I could have it every single day if I wanted. And they would cover the costs. They would do it all.
And did you mentally cope with the attention, having sort of not been very well known and then coming out? And
truthfully, I loved it. If you want the honest truth, I like attention. I'm a performer. I like to be on stage. I love an audience in front of me. So I do love all of that aspect. But like when I was in there, I was going through. We had a big breakup, and it was quite a vital point of the show. So I went and spoke to a therapist in there, which was 24/7. We could go. So that's when I went and started.
During the show?
During the show. So all of the shows we do, there is 24/7 care.
Yeah,
whenever
if you need to talk to someone now,
you need to talk to somebody, you can do. Which I don't think it used to be like that.
Right, okay.
But now it is like that. And then after, you can have it as many times as a week as you want it, whenever you want it.
I think the hardest thing is with most of these scenarios that we talk about, it's like we talk about the person themselves, but actually the hardest scenario is the family that are around them. So if somebody's pregnant, you go ask the woman, how's it being pregnant? You don't ask the husband that's dealing with the scenario, like, oh, well, how are you doing actually? And I think that's the hardest thing in all these situations. Like, you're in Love Island, you're fine, you're in a TV show, you're getting death threats and horrible things said to you. How does the family around you deal with that scenario when they feel it's so personal? It's so like a sin about my child or my cousin, whoever it may be. That's sometimes something we don't ever think about, the wider circle that one person can affect thousands.
That ripple effect.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Craig, because we're going to try and squeeze in our last question. If you want
Sorry,
to do one more.
sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. It's all great.
One more question for you, AJ. Have you found it difficult dealing with health issues in the public eye?
It's hard because like you feel like you do so many TV shows, everything feels open, and people feel like they've got a kind of like a hold on your life. Like they should be able to ask you a question like, how do you feel? And sometimes it's very hard to say, hey, that's a private matter, or I don't want to talk about it. For me, it's about being the one thing that I would say is being selfish, and selfish in the way that like I like my routine. I like going to the gym. I know what I do and I know what I'm good at, like, and being quite selfish with that and keeping that routine and not breaking it. When it comes down to certain things, like, for example, the accident that happened with Abby, and unfortunately she got burnt, and dealing with that for my mental health, I became a full-time carer overnight because of the pandemic, like from making sure she took her 27 tablets a day, all through day and night, like having to clean her wounds every 2 hours for months on end, and like being thrown into these situations that you can't be prepared for. A, if I was a normal person, but B, being in the public eye, it was very hard. And I think the one thing for me, like Curtis saw me, it got to the point where I couldn't be a hypocrite and say like, you need help, you need to talk to somebody, and then not be at the point where I was at my lowest, like I've never thought I'd ever be in my life, not even being able to talk because I was that just stuck in a corner in a room, and actually having to talk to somebody, and then actually now talking about it publicly, I know is helping other people that would be in that scenario. So I try and use it as a positive and try and forget about all the negative, dark sides. But knowing that I've had them really dark times, it allows me to help other people and kind of find the light, maybe.
It's real swings and roundabout situation because you get so much positivity and support from people, and then you do also get the opposite as well. So it really is swings and roundabouts.
And my one point is, I don't want to judge if someone's going to write a bad comment or say something to my face, I don't want to judge them for what they've said, because I personally don't know what position they are in their life, and I wouldn't want to say something or do something that would maybe push them over the edge. And that's how I deal with this kind of, not disconnect, but that's how I deal with it. That may not be right for other people, but I know that works for me.
And sometimes it is trying to just sometimes not talk about it at all, like, and keep it out. For example, if you want your private life, so let's say relationships, things like that, just don't put it out there. Try not to talk about it. Don't put it on social media, things like that, really. And that's a way of just trying to keep it as private as you can.
Easier said than done.
But yeah, a lot easier said than done.
Absolutely. No, a really important message. The other thing you slipped in there as well, AJ, was the importance of exercise for you. Because actually, exercise didn't come up when we were in the conversation there, and I think it's such. We did in this sort of.
I go
wild
to the gym
footing.
every morning.
Well, it's so
more
important.
for mental than physical.
Yeah.
If I don't go to the gym in the morning, mentally I struggle.
Yeah,
it's a mental thing for me.
Importance of it is so vital. Okay, we're running out of time here, so I want to try and sneak in one last quick question, which is, and I'll give you advance warning. Nobody knows who's going first in this question, but it's on. And actually, we're going to make Curtis go first.
Yeah.
Curtis is fast at everything. So, thinking, we're all a bit older now. So, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self? What have you learned? Say, I wish I had known that at age 16. And it's the same question for everybody. So the three of you, all the three have got time to think.
So
save his money.
I went into a competitive life from a young age, 12 years old. Now, it made me feel like I was older than I was. So at 16 years old, you are still 16 years old. You're a kid. Try things. Don't be afraid to say yes and say no to things. Enjoy your life. You can still become the world champion at a sport that you're doing at an older age. 16 isn't the end of your career or anything. So act your age almost and enjoy your life. I thought I was a 30-year-old at 16, put it mildly. And then I thought, oh, if I want to try something new, it's too late to try it now. Yeah. And I do regret that to this day. Yeah. So don't be afraid to try new things. You're still young.
But that's, I mean, it's so difficult thinking back to when I was 16. You thought the world ended a year or two later.
Yeah,
I mean, not that it ended,
but you genuinely
you couldn't say beyond it. I know,
and it's so not true. I'm 26 years old now, and I just.
I thought you're older than that because AJ, he looks older.
Yeah. I'm only 13. I haven't got 16 yet. I'm fine.
You know, the sun's aged me, we'll say. AJ stress.
So for the listener, because there's a competition between who looks younger between AJ and Curtis.
There's no competition. I look younger and I'll take it.
Yeah.
But I'm older.
It's that Botox. No, he has.
So Curtis, AJ then. So AJ, same question to you. What advice you give your 16-year-old self?
I honestly would just say do everything the same. I wouldn't. I knew who I was very young. At the age of 12, I said, I want to be a professional dancer. I want to do this. I was a very headstrong child, and I wouldn't change anything. No, I'm quite happy with what I've done where I am now, and I've always been that way. And I think it's kind of trusting and believing in who you are, and that's what I've always done. So I wouldn't change it.
Excellent. I'm a bit dumbstruck by that one. Nobody's ever answered it like that before. But I suppose that what the message, the positive message is, have more belief in yourself. At that age. Trust yourself at that age.
People don't. People question who they are throughout the whole of their lives. They're like, oh, I don't know what my career is. I don't know what to do. I've always been very, if I like something, I do it. If I don't like it, I don't do it. I make a clear decision and I stick with it. And I wouldn't change that.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, excellent advice. Linda, and then we'll go for it. Gemma.
Well, I think I get my 16-year-old self to come and have a word with me now because it was far more positive, far more adventurous, much braver, just did everything I wanted to do, was having an absolute ball. And I wish I could take some of it now and put it into action. Because I made loads and loads of mistakes, but they've all led me to this place where I couldn't be happier. I've got a fantastic husband and family, and life's good. So without those mistakes, I wouldn't have taken that path. So I wouldn't really change myself then.
Yeah, but that's good advice as well, which is we all have our own journeys, and we are the product of those journeys. So like having no regrets is really the.
No, I had no regrets.
Yeah, no message. No. Yeah, fantastic like that. So then finally, then over to Gemma.
I guess I'd say I think thinking about it from a mental health perspective. I think when I was 16, I kind of didn't understand really how mental health issues can affect anyone. So if I was struggling with things, I'd be thinking, well, this is just my issue to deal with. Like, I've got a safe home, I've got a great family, like I've got my health and everything. Like, what have I got to worry about? So then, sort of beat myself up if I was struggling mentally. So I think in terms of, and hopefully people who are 16 now have this message a bit more out there, but not to kind of blame yourself for things and sort of struggle on your own with things and think that there has to be a giant looming reason, a very obvious thing you can point to in your life as to why you might be struggling with something. Like, mental health issues affect, 1 in 4 of us, as we say from the stats, but can affect anyone, you won't always be able to say exactly why or pinpoint it, but it doesn't mean that you can't get help for it anyway.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to end, because it's a really optimistic note as well,
Yeah.
recognizing, being realistic about we all are these individual experiences, and 1 in 4 of us, as you say, Gemma, will experience mental health problems, and there's something about being that importance of connection as well, being connected to others and reaching out and get the support. So get the support early. So all that remains for me to do is to thank on behalf.
I want to ask you the same question.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Considering you've done so much
Yeah.
research in so many different aspects, like what would you say to yourself?
So my see, I give you guys. I'm trying to buy time here.
Yeah.
Buy time here. So I think, well, not being as hard on myself. I'm super perfectionistic, and but we do a lot of work on social perfectionism, which is really concerned about other people's expectations of you and your behavior. So I spend so much of my teens just trying to please other people, and then you're in this cycle, this spiral which never ends, because you're trying to please somebody.
Yeah.
You think you're letting them down. So it's about self-compassion, just going accept yourself as you are. And then the other bit is, which is sort of vaguely funny but true, is when I was in my teens. So I've grown into my ears, right? So people who can't see this can't see this. So and Linda's looking at me going, your ears look fine.
Well,
Yeah,
have
they
very
do.
normal looking ears for the
Yeah.
sake of the time.
So basically, when I was a teen, I spent my 14, 15, 16-year-olds trying to fix my hair so my ears didn't look as if they stuck out. And I was really, everybody stuck my ears.
They don't stick out. That's why. I'm sorry.
But honestly, it was, so I would spend so much of my time being concerned about that. And then I grew my hair long, in part because of that. But then, obviously, the advice I give my 16-year-old self is, it's fine, your ears were always fine. And then your head seemed to have grown into anyways.
It's expanded and they've gone round the side.
I think that's a big thing though when you're that age and stuff, aren't you?
This is not what I
you've
expected.
not finished growing, and I think looks and stuff are a massive key thing, and you
totally.
need to realise you're going to grow into your looks, guys.
Aren't they? Kids
Yeah.
will, they'll point out anything that is dead normal on you.
Yeah, because the last series point, and we'll bring it to a close, is, so we know in those adolescent years, so your psychological skin is much thinner. So you're much more likely. So we know, because the brain's still developing, we know that your emotional processing is developing at a different rate. Your cognitive processing, because your brain's still developing into your mid-20s. So in that period there, we know there's lots of research out there. 14, 15, 16, those bows and arrows of rejection, of shame, they're much more likely to damage you. You think are going to damage you as an adolescent. So that's the other piece of advice. Any younger person listening to this, that your how you're feeling is just, sadly, that's the way our bodies are all built. But things do get better, and there is a really positive future out there. So thanks for that. So AJ, you're in trouble for that one. Okay, so big thanks on behalf of Craig and I to our fantastic guest. So thanks everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Cheers.